Hieno poika, noin! Hienosti! Oi! Noin, hienosti! Hyvä! Hyvä! Hi, I am Tuukka from Zip Team. This first lecture is, I would say, the most important lecture what I'm about to give to you. I'm going to walk you through this kind of dog training map. This map gives you all information, whether you need to take steps backwards or still continue doing what you're doing, or can you go forward with your dog. And here is the map. As you can see, relationship is connected with everything. Then there is activity and technique, which are teaching level, and demanding and preparation, which are training level. I'm going to talk about how to build proper relationship and what it actually means, as well as what is real activity, which is very much connected with your relationship. And then, of course, some technical examples, and then we are talking about demanding and preparation, and these are those terms. And first, what we will talk about, of course, is relationship, and this relationship is connected with everything. When we are building a relationship, most important thing is to spend time with your dog. And in many times our concentration is how to train and how to teach, but to really spend time, this is actually the most important thing. So spend time, because if you don't do this, the place where you are keeping your dog, this place will be the teacher instead of you. For me, it is a very important thing that dogs are actually staying with me. So they are living in my house instead of living in some kennel places. For me, this is the best way to build proper relationship. At my home, there is so-called 5-thing rule. It can be 4 or 6, it doesn't matter, but it just describes this situation that I don't have too many rules. And those rules are something which are forbidden, so dogs may not do. So when I'm busy or lazy or bad mood or good mood or whatever, my rules don't change. They are all the time the same. So it would be quite difficult to have 27 rules at home. So difficult to keep those rules. And then dogs start to learn to read me. And so now when my mood changes, then I can behave like this or like this. And then now there is this connection when you go to competition and you start to be very excited, even scared. And now there can be this connection when emotionally you change. Maybe your dog start to change also his emotions and his behavior because he learned to read you. So to avoid this, it's a quite nice idea to just don't mind too much about some things, but pay attention on only few things which are forbidden. When my dog wants to communicate with me, so they start to take contact and come to me and want to be cuddled. In this situation, I mostly always just react like this. Very nice that you come to me. So you start this and I will react. So this is giving this also these tools for future when we teach dogs to activate us. So dog comes to me, so I react emotionally. It's not like giving food immediately, because this would give this idea for the dog that I need to come to you to get the food. But if I come to you, that you will react and you will give me those emotions which are connected with our relationship, not the relationship with between the dog and the food or dog and the ball, but dog and you. So, all this would mean that at your home, your dog learns to be calm. Also learns those words no and yes, and those emotions behind those words. So, if you say no to your dog, from dog's point of view, it would be like this: that okay, I'm not going to touch this subject anymore, sir. And also, when you say yes, good boy, so the dog really feels it and enjoys it. And when you say yes, good boy, it doesn't mean that, yeah, okay, give me the food, give me the ball or something like this, which would mean that now you created the situation that you have a relationship with between your dog and the ball or dog and the food, but when the relationship should be between the dog and you. So this is very important, and I do this all the time at home. So my dogs learn to be calm when it's time to be calm, and when I cuddle them, they learn those emotions, and when I stroke and praise them, they learn those emotions. And when I say no, stop it, you can really see the reaction that okay, this was something that I don't want to do anymore. Okay, this next subject, what we will talk about is activity. And what is real activity then? In activity, you could think it this way, that in activity, dog tries to activate his handler all the time. So when dog is making, for example, heel work, the dog is not thinking about the priority target, which would be the ball. And this can create now the conflict between the handler and the dog, because actually the handler is many times standing on the dog's way to get there where he really wants. And for example, you can see that many times dogs start to make noise, or you can see those muzzles are very stuck, so the dog is not really open for obedience. So in good training, activity itself is a reward when dog tries to activate his handler instead of the ball. This also means that when you go to competition, dog doesn't learn the difference between competition and training. In activity, we have 3 ways to reward the dog. First, and I would say most important way to reward, is to use so-called social reward. This means that the dog understands the meaning of your praising, and when you're touching and praising your dog, it feels so good that later when you are training, the dog really demands these emotions from you. Second one is to use food as a reward. Sometimes some handlers are giving food kind of for free without any activity from dog's side. So this is something that you should also pay attention on. Dog should be very active for the food before you start to use food for teaching technique. One example of building activity for the food is to teach the dog to eat food out of your hand. So, for example, that you have food in your hand, and dog is like trying to get the food, and when you feel that the dog really tries to get it, then reward. So that the dog understands that also in this, activity leads to activity. So through these emotions, these social rewards, he gets the food. In here, when he is active, then he will be rewarded. Now, of course, when the dog understands to be active, you can start to use this hand or this hand to teach some technical stuff. Istu. Hyvä. Istu. Hyvä. Hienosti. No, hyvä. If you have very much issues to create activity for food, there are some other ways to do it also. For example, you can, for example, use so-called bowl exercises to teach the dog to put his front legs inside the bowl, and this is something that you reward when the dog goes there, immediately reward, so that there is some mission before the dog gets food. And these types of things can help the dog to understand the meaning of activity.
Noin, hyvä, hienosti, noin, hyvä. Hyvä, noin, hienosti, hyvä. Noin, hyvä. Noin, hyvä, noin, hienosti, hyvä. Noin, hyvä, hienosti, noin, hyvä. Hyvä, hienosti.
Remember that whatever you do, that if you want to create activity, you have to have those types of emotions inside you also. So you can't assume that you can be very lazy and dog just learns to be active. When even if your goal is that the dog is active towards passive target, when you are building this, you have to pay attention on this, that it's not ready before you build it. Third one is to use fighting spirit. And for this we can use ball or tug, and personally I more prefer to use tug, because I want my dog to really learn how to fight with me, to create and develop this fighting spirit. Especially with young dogs, sometimes ball is quite difficult actually, because many times they want to bite the rope instead of the ball, and ball is something that it's not so nice to bite and fight, but it's something that it's nice to run when handler is throwing it away. But of course, when there is not yet enough fighting spirit, you can see that those dogs many times they are not running back to his handler very fast, so it can create some issues. So when you are teaching dog how to chase the target, let's talk about, for example, tug now, try to make it so that motorically it's not too difficult, because some people are stimulating this this kind of a prey stimulation, so that the tug is going everywhere. It looks like Bruce Lee with his nunchakus, and it's such to be quite impossible for the dog to understand when I can get it, how I can get it. And then they start to be like, okay, too difficult, I'm not going to do this. And this in this situation, many handlers are, okay, it's difficult, I give you the tug now. So try to make it so that it's easy to get, but then you can, of course, but dog needs to be active. So when the dog is active and tries to get it, so you have also time to read when the dog is as active as he can, and then he can get it. And when the dog got it, then start to build fighting. And fighting is something that you should pay attention on this, that don't be so active yourself, and the dog has difficulties to even take this. So I try to survive. My handler is very active. So try to make it so that the dog learns to be active. And also when you are fighting with your dog, remember that when dog is reading your emotions, and as earlier we were talking about relationship, the dog understands to read your signals, right? Also inside fighting, that you have to have those emotions that now you're really fighting, that the dog really enjoys of this game. And then when the dog was active and you rewarded him, so after you rewarded, many times when I'm building this fighting spirit, I just take my dog here, but I don't touch the head or toy before the dog is active, because many times you see young dogs, they are not ready for this. I do it once, for example. Imagine that the dog comes and handler's hands are coming like this towards when the dog yet don't want to fight so much. So the dog wants mostly like own it. It's now mine, so it's not so comfortable to go to my handler. So I teach the dog to just come here and I just stroke him like here, not like touching head or toy at all. So the dog learns that, okay, it's very nice place to be here. So in this situation, I also use so-called social reward. And when I'm teaching the out command, first of all, I use two different out commands, which is like leave it or out. And this leave it is something which is I prepare the dog before I start to say out. So leave it means that leave it, and when he don't have it anymore, I just take it. Okay, now you don't have it. I start to build the activity towards me. So react, I praise, and when you start to feel those emotions, I again start to reward with playing. So this is kind of the idea of this. The dog learns to activate his handler, and also after out, the dog immediately starts to activate his handler. And the same thing now when you have the out command. But when you have out command, this means that out immediately. When you are building this, it's good idea to use like leave it command, which means that there is now, it doesn't need to be necessary immediately. So you take your time, understand out, and then out is immediately activity towards me. So in this idea, when you see this hand is here, so this is the head. This is not only out, because now the dog wants the target, but out is activity. So out is not only technical out, but it's emotion, which means start to make activity towards the handler. Okay, let us imagine that there are three different rooms. The first and the most important and biggest room is room for social reward. In this room, everything is connected with the dog and the handler. So the dog is not thinking about ball or food, nothing like that. This is the only place where the dog wants to feel those emotions that when handler is praising and so on. The second room is room where dog gets food. So there is also activity, but this activity goes straight to food. And the third one is activity towards ball or tug. So this is room where the dog will play. So now the first room is something that it always starts from first room. So this first room is the way to get to another room. So first room, the dog is understanding how to activate the handler, open the door, and next room. And there will be food and also some technical teaching. And then again, when the dog is rewarded, back to the first room. And now when the dog is behaving very nicely, go to second room. And if you want, go to third room. And after out, go to first room again. So play with these ideas. So it's kind of 3 rooms, 3 ways to reward activity.
Yeah, no, nice.
Now, when your dog starts to offer you activity, this behavior and those emotions, you can start to train or actually teach technique. Technique is something that you should repeat quite much. But don't make long exercises. Don't try to take everything at the same time. So it means that, for example, if you are teaching sit motion and the dog is offering activity and makes a couple of very nice sittings, then don't continue anymore. Leave it there. And then later, maybe tomorrow, continue again. The idea is that when you are teaching technique, at the same time you are teaching activity. So these are combined now. And in future, when you start to think about speed, for example, this speed comes from activity side, not like just avoiding pressure. So it's important to really think about those emotions inside the technique. Dogs should have a kind of a perfect vision what to do emotionally and technically before you reach the next level, which would be like teaching demandings. So without this clear knowledge, you actually can't demand, because then the dog doesn't understand where to channel this type of handling. One example where we many times combine wrong technique and wrong emotion is sit from motion. Sit from motion is unnatural motion. Normally, like us, also dogs, before sitting, they stand. And if we are supporting this, for example, with puppies, that 2 to 3 times per day when we're giving the food, we have the food cup here, and the dog needs to sit, and then we put the food here, and okay, now you can take it. Now the sit went backwards technically, and then there was quite passive situation before getting there. So now the dog was learning wrong technique and wrong emotions. So proper way to teach sitting is actually so that the dog kind of puts his back legs in. So sit from motion, the energy goes forward. And of course, when we are teaching this, we must mind about the technique and also the activity inside the technique. So to understand this, that everything is connected with everything, don't make exercises which are making your future quite much more problematic. So this is just one example about teaching kind of a proper technique. But if you're repeating at your home, you're repeating wrong activity and wrong technique, you must understand that everything is connected with everything. So there can be some issues coming if you don't mind about it. This doesn't mean that, for example, if you have a puppy, you can't teach technique. Of course you can if a puppy shows activity towards you and puppy has those emotions. What you must remember is that you need to create those emotions, and then you can teach activity and you can teach technique when the dog is showing those emotions. You don't do anything with technique without emotion. So this is very important to understand that everything should be combined. When you are teaching your dog, don't think that it's just some type of routine that you need to do it. When you see, for example, that your dog is not developing, then take steps back. For example, start to teach again only activity, and then when the dog is active, then start to again add this activity inside your technique. So never train technique or teach technique without activity. Emotions, this is the most important thing.
Hieno poika, noin! Tuo! Hienosti! Aivan! Oi! Hyvä!
When we have reached this point where you have very good relationship with your dog and dog really activates you and also the dog understands the technique, so super technique and very nice activity. Now we can start to talk about how to build tools for demanding. First, we talk about active correction. There are, of course, different tools to do these corrections or use it, but actually, it doesn't matter so much what it is, it matters where to channel it. In this, I will use regular leash correction as an example. Now there is a big difference between thinkings. When I'm talking about how to build correction, it doesn't mean that you're using this correction. So first build it, and afterwards when the dog has all this knowledge, then you can start to use it. How to build it? First, what you need to understand is that don't teach active corrections when activity level and drive level are low. Drive should be high because this is the place where you want the dog to understand to connect the stimulation. So it's all about channeling. So how I do it then is I always do active corrections when there is a mistake, but now this mistake should not happen because of a lower drive. So if a drive gets lower, too low, make it so that go back in this using this map, for example, that place where you are just creating more activity. So example of this would be this, that when dog is healing you and it just for some reason watches somewhere else, so the head turns away, not because of low drive, but something was disturbing, take a step to your side and give a small correction, and immediately after correction play and praise your dog so that the dog will channel this energy to activity. So some people could now think that why did you reward your dog because when it made the mistake? But actually it's not like that. I'm just adding activity and those good emotions so that inside this correction. So correction and immediately play. So the dog understands that this means activity, and this is all about channeling the correction, this pressure to right direction, so that this creates, when it creates stress, but positive one, not negative one. Negative pressure would mean that there is too much pressure, so the dog feels that this is not comfortable, I don't want to do it, so actually it takes drive and activity more lower. So be aware that this don't happen. And later, when the dog understands this and already learned this, you can start to use this correction and just praise the dog after correction, so that the dog is not anymore released after this correction to do something else. So then you can start to use it. When we are talking about passive correction, when active correction was supposed to give when drive is high, passive correction should be opposite. So the dog understands to channel it with calmness. So good place where to teach passive corrections is at home. If you remember those 5-thing rule at home, that those the things were something that dog may not touch. Those are like stoves. Don't touch it; it burns. This is the place where to teach passive corrections. Before even starting to give information how to make passive corrections, remember this now, that there are different types of dog, different relationships. Not every dog are Ferraris. So don't think it this way that you need to make it as I now tell, because it can destroy your relationship with certain types of dogs. So for some dogs, very, very small stimulation, even using your voice, is more than enough. So don't do this if your dog is very sensitive for corrections, for example. But sometimes when we have Ferraris, and what Ferrari needs is also brakes. So for some types of dogs, this is now quite important information also. Psychologically, our one problem when we start to use passive correction is this, that many times we get angry. So this anger inside actually we can't channel. It stops our channeling system because we are humans, and easily those emotions stay. So make everything so that your emotions are controlled. Because if you can't control your emotions, you can't channel those. So, example of making passive correction would be this, that, for example, there is some place where you really don't want your dog to go, or steal food, or destroy something, so something like this. When dog is doing something which is totally denied, the dog may not do. I do it like this, that I take I physically take the collar like this and just take the dog away from that place and say, no, stop it. And then, good, this is what I want. So I stroke and praise very calmly now. Next time, dog is doing the same, I make the same. And third time, if the dog still wants to continue doing this, now I take a little bit more stronger grip and kind of passivate the dog very calmly. But when I do this, I'm not angry, but I'm serious. So I said, stop it, stop, now enough. You're not going to do this. And now if my dog tries to resist, for example, fights back, or tries to bite me, or pleases me too much, or something like whatever, I don't accept. So I just keep till the dog is totally calm. And now when the dog is calm, I lose my grip and say, good, this is what I want. And now if you sense my emotions, you can see that my emotions are very calm. I support my dog. So always support your dog. Don't be against. And when I stroke him now here, and the dog is very calm, I take step back, and then I call come. And now when the dog comes with pleasing, then I show a little bit more emotions, like, good boy, this is what I want. This is exactly what I want. So I don't let this dog to feel unsureness. So this is very important. So always when you put threat or correction, whatever, it matters where you channel it. So this is very important. Be very careful with this idea anyhow, because if you have too sensitive dog, for example, this type of handling, be very careful and make it much more small, with much more smaller stimulation. Demanding means that you build tools to use also authority. And remember that authority is, it describes this word as a respect. So authority has nothing to do with scaredness. So the dog should not be scared of you. This is the thing. When we have a very good relationship, we have a situation where dog really activates us and we have a nice technique and the dog is offering this, and we have reached also this demanding level, so the dog understands those stimulations and channels those stimulations to right direction. We finally get to this point where we can prepare the dog to competitions, and the first competition kind of is the pH test. Even if it's a trial, but still from dog's point of view, we have to reach this level before going to pH test. So don't go there too early. This preparation level means that we take kind of everything inside the training, what really happens in trials or in competitions. First thing what we will start to do is to teach the dog to wait. Wait before the exercise. For example, when you go to training field, you don't start your exercise immediately, but teach the dog to wait, because this happens in trials and in competition. And also waiting between those exercises. So what happens when you are training, for example, after heel work, there is waiting when judge is writing his marks, and so on. These types of things you need to take inside your trainings. So this is very good example of BH test, and as you can see, there are 3 handlers and one needs to step aside to wait her turn, and I'm on the right with my that time dog Estrelles von Vector, and I joined later to WUS 2019 with this dog. At this point, I did not yet give a signal for obedience, and I'm about to give it. And watching the tail, you can see now it happened. So I gave the signal for obedience, and the dog was reacting. So as you can see, there is a long waiting before BH test, and also waitings inside BH test just before judge gives you permission to start your exercise. So make sure that your dog is really trained this level, so you have to reach this preparation level before taking part to BH test. Otherwise, it can be very problematic if your dog understands and learns the differences between training and trials and competitions. And if this happens, then it's far more difficult to solve this problem, because dogs easily learns those emotions, what happens there, and then it will be quite much difficult to kind of retrain when dog already understands and learns those emotions. So make sure your dog is ready for pH test before taking part. When earlier dog activated you and you reacted on this and started to make some exercises, now the situation is a little bit different, because we are teaching dog to understand what happens in competition and trials. So now we say, no, wait. And so dog learns to be calm. And now we start our this exercise using signal for obedience. So signal starts it. I teach this signal kind of all the time when I train my dog. So when my dog wants to activate me and as high as he can get in his activity level, then I give a signal, and after signal immediately I start to play. So the dog will connect these things together. So signal means high activity and high drive. When I teach my dog to wait and to be calm before exercise starts, and this actually is the exercise to teach the dog to wait. So now I can open everything using my signal, and when dog reacts on my signal very nicely, of course I reward the dog. But if not, then of course I already told this demanding level. So I can also use corrections and those tools, so the dog already understands where to channel those, even if the level, drive level and activity level are a little bit lower now. So dog already understands where to channel. So this is kind of the next phase. This preparation level also includes this idea of overtraining, and this is something that what I do with dogs, that I teach dogs to handle some things which actually never happens in real trial or in real competition. One example of this could be, for example, that when your dog is in lay down position and you have a second handler and a long leash, long line, and second handler is a little bit pulling, trying to pull the dog away from his place, and when the dog is really resisting there and no, I'm not going there, so, and now you start to reward. So of course in competition this never happens. So this is one example of overtraining. So things like this, it's kind of a situation where sky is the limit, but also be very careful that do not do anything very stupid that start to do some things which are too difficult for the dog. So it's something just making sure that your training level never collapses. So you can use this map if in any situation you meet some issues or problems. Try to find answers watching this map. For example, if you have problems in technique, is your dog active or do you have some issues in your relationship? If the dog doesn't take their demandings, maybe you have problems in activity or in technique or something like this. So read this map and try to find answers here, and if you need to take steps backwards, so do it. Shortly, relationship meant that dog understands to read handler signals right emotionally. In activity, dog activates his handler all the time. And technique, you remember that technique needed to have this activity inside, so never train technique without activity. And demanding was teaching those corrections before using them, and preparation level was all together. Now you put all in and start to teach and train as it is in trials and in competitions. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'm looking forward to meet you again, maybe in other videos or in seminars. So all the best for you guys and take care.